Καλησπέρα. Σας καλωσορίζουμε από τις εκδόσεις Good.
Good afternoon. We would like to welcome you to our meeting with Hilla Bloom. Her book, How to Love Your Daughter, has been published by our publication house, and she will have a discussion with the translator of the book, Mrs. Cohen. Then you can take a signed book from the pavilion of our company. Thank you very much.
Ναι, μ' ακούτε έτσι? Ακούγομαι? Ωραία.
Can you hear me? Yes. We have the pleasure to have with us for the first time in Greece, Hilla Bloom, on the occasion of the publication of her book by Gutenberg Publications, How to Love Your Daughter. Hilla Bloom was born in Jerusalem, and she's an author that belongs to the younger generation of Israeli authors. We will see that. We will be talking about that later on. If you know about Israeli literature, you will better understand what I'm trying to say. Ever since her first novel in 2011, The Visit, she managed to convince the critics as well as the audience that a strong new author has emerged in the literature scenery of Israel. How to Love Your Daughter is her second novel. It was published in 2021. It was awarded the Sapir Prize, that is the most important literature prize, and it became a best novel, and it was also a candidate in France, and it has been translated in 16 different languages. As soon as you take the book in your hands, you will wonder what does the title mean, How to Love Your Daughter. You may guess that the author that it may be one of the books that are trying to give us simple solutions to solve complicated and complex problems. You may guess that the author, with full sincerity, will give instructions to us parents. Or you may guess that this title is ironic. None of this applies. Here we have to do with a novel that is fascinating. It investigates the complicated relations between a mother and a daughter. And the narrator is talking about her daughter, but at the same time, we learn how she was bred by her own mother, what are her relationships with her mother, and so we have two generations of women that are narrating. Or rather, the narrator is bringing us back to the way she was bred by her mother through a very complicated structure. The author is managing to reach these secret psychological and mental aspects that only a novel can reveal. So the novel has humor, it has suspense, and the end that I will not reveal makes it look like a psychological thriller. So the story is simple. A 50-year-old mother is narrating with many references to her past. So from her point of view, her relationships with her daughter Leah, and she's trying to explain how her daughter was alienated by her and to want nothing to do with her. So in the first paragraph that I will be reading in Greek and the author in Hebrew, we see the hero in Norway outside the house of her daughter. So the novel starts like this. The first time I saw my granddaughters, I was standing at the opposite of at the opposite side of the road. I didn't dare to get near. In Birmingham, the windows are big and low, and I felt ashamed. I was afraid because these little girls were an easy prey for my glance, for my eyes. The little ones did not care of what is happening outside. They were touched when they were focused on their own hobbies. Small girls with beautiful hair. They were alone in the living room. If I was trying to reach them out, I would. If someone was asking me, "What are you doing here?" I could not explain, so I left. This is the English translation, more or less.
This in
Oh,
Hebrew.
yes. I'm sorry, I put it on my phone. And I have to take my. I love it that that you introduced me as a young generation, but I'm so old by now, and I have to take my glasses off.
For us, you are young.
So, בפעם הראשונה שראיתי את נכדותיי, עמדתי מעבר לרחוב, לא העזתי להתקרב. בשכונות הפרברים של אחרון, אבל גם אני הייתי חסרת הגנה. אילו הסבו מעט את פניהן, הן היו רואות אותי שם. הילדות לא עסקו בנעשה בחוץ, הן היו נתונות לעצמן, לדאגותיהן הפעוטות. ילדות עם שיער בהיר ודק שנשפך מבין האצבעות כמו קמח. הן היו לבדן בסלון, יותר מדי בהישג ידי. אילו נשאלתי, לא הייתה לי דרך להסביר את הימצאי שם. הלכתי.
תודה. Άρα το μυθιστόρημα αρχίζει.
So the novel starts from the middle, in fact, and everything that follows are enlightening the mystery why and how this mother is standing there spying the life of her daughter. But in fact, they were enlightened and they were illuminated with a totally different kind of light, some concepts that may be taken for granted. This is why we're not even daring to analyze, like love. What do we call love? And especially the mother's love. How the mother's love is expressed and how is it conceived by children. Before I raise my first question to the author, I would like to tell you that her hero has a very special feature. Whenever she has a difficulty, she has a problem, she mentions something that she has read and that has to do with her experiences. And she manages to pass this through her experience. So has an experiential relationship with reading. This is what I'm going to do, and I will ask the following to the author. So this is the first question. Amos Oz, the question will be later on. So Amos Oz has said that every start of a story is a kind of contract between the author and the reader. There are, of course, all kinds of contracts, even contracts that are insincere. So, how insincere is the principle of how to love your daughter? So, how reliable is our hero? Is your hero? Is she sincere? To what extent is she sincere with herself and with the reader? Is your heroine?
Look, when we say when we pose sincerity and reliability, it seems like if someone is being sincere, he can be reliable, and if he's unsincere, he's not reliable. But I think that in almost every aspect that you would look in the novel, I hope at least, you will see that things are not polarized exactly like that. What I want to say is that in essence, no narrator is ever reliable 100% because no telling of a life every telling of a life story is always subjective because you always have to choose, and even by what you say first and what you say later and what you do not say, you already made a choice that makes you at the view of some people reliable and others not. If you ask me if Leah is Joella is notably lying to to us as readers, I would say absolutely not. I would say that she is trying to be sincere, but she has many. She's blindsided by many things, and her awareness is limited in the sense that almost every awareness is limited. And then you look at her, and you listen to her account of the story, and you don't hear anything from her daughter. But you can, I think, very quickly assume that if the daughter was there to tell the story, it would be a different story. Does it mean that it would be more reliable? I don't want to say that. I mean, the daughters. It would be different because, as I said, by definition, once you start to narrate a life story, which is made of such a humongous, endless number of details, as soon as you make your first choice, you lose some sort of reliability. And so that is essential to the novel. I hope that gives some sort of answer.
Παρ' όλα αυτά, θα ήθελα να επιμείνω λίγο με τη δεύτερη ερώτηση.
So I would like to insist with my second question on the same issue, but now in terms of memories. So your heroine says, I narrate everything, whatever I know and whatever I remember. But memories are a weak source. It is a fertile ground for art. You can shape them, you can give them forms. So my question is Joella the mother who is recalling the past and she's trying to find her mistakes and her errors in her relationships with her daughter? Is she misleading the readers? Is she distorting the past? And what is the role of memories in this whole story when we're trying to reproduce, to represent the story of our life? You were talking about photos and photo albums, the photos that we select in order to beautify, to embellish our life. So what is the role of memories and memory in general?
I can say a few things about this. First of all, when I sat down to write it, I didn't know what exactly I was writing. I was searching for a very long time of ways and stories that could somehow carry a sentiment that I was interested in. And so I started I came to know my characters as I went along. I let them act in front of me and thought, okay, this makes sense, and then, to the next step, to the next step. And one of the things that I realized quite soon in the novel is that I want Leah to be an only child of an only child. That they are both, she is an only child to her mother, and the mother was an only child to her parents. Also, Leah has a father, so to her both parents. And the reason for that was that I'm very interested in the distortion of our early memories. I mean, all of us carry an emotional cargo from our first years that is very deeply rooted in us. But what we can tell about the sources of this childhood has been intentionally or unintentionally mediated and edited in so many ways. Also by us, by choosing what to remember or not, and by others retelling us our lives in a way that forms a memory and reshapes a memory, etc. And I think that this tension between the emotional cargo and the narration of our lives is good enough reason to write many books. It's like, I think it's a drive for a lot of people to be writing. So I wanted a situation in which there will be no other evidence and no other viewers of her childhood, that it will be a word against word, a memory against memory. Okay. Also, we know, of course, when siblings to the same parents, that happens a lot. There's complexities as well, in the sense that a lot of people grew up in the same house and remember not the interpretation, the facts. They remember completely differently. But for me, it was important to investigate the situation in which an only child, she's the only. How do you say in court? She's the only one that can. The word the only witness, exactly. She's the only witness other than her mother to their relationship, and the mother is the only witness on her side, and there's no one from the outside that can determine between them. So what is left is, and also we get only one of the narratives, and we're left to fill up all the other gaps for us, which I think in a way resembles a lot of what happens in life. I know what I know about my childhood. which is absurd because I have been there. Nobody has been there besides me. It was only me, all of us. Each person in this hall has been in his own childhood. But what we can tell about this childhood is very, very fragile in the sense that it went through a lot of editing of many, many kinds. And then we have to start to retrace back and see what was actually there. And as you said, for some people it's important to make their childhood stories nicer than it was. For some people it's important to make it worse than it was. Some people really try to somehow navigate between those two. I am super interested in this because I think this is the foundation for all of us psychology, and it's such a mess, you know, and no one can sort it out, and we have to realize that. So I think
is the death of the intention of the author. And Hera Bloom's heroine made me feel concerned because I have another question about the heroine. As you will be reading the book, you will see that this mother, as she has flashbacks in the past about how she brought up her daughter, she creates an ambivalent feeling to us. We have the feeling that she always does something wrong, but we can't specify it. We have the feeling that there is an underground irrational thing between what she says and what she does. I'll give you an example. She takes her daughter, her 8-year-old daughter, to the eye doctor to give her spectacles. And although she assures us that she loves her and adores her, when she sees her with her spectacles, she looks at her with the cold eye of a third person and she feels sorry for her. And she uses some expressions that doesn't show so much affection. So my question is the following, and it's a provocating question. Was this your intention, Hilda Bloom, to makes us feel confused so that we don't know whether to be identified with your heroine or to hate her and dislike her and to not know whether we feel something bad about her? Is this right or wrong?
I think, you know, I'm saying like life poses this, then, you know, who am I to say otherwise? When we look at relationships and when we experience relationships, nothing is black and white, nothing is binary. We feel all the time a melange of emotions and thoughts, and we really want to put things into molds and into categories, but things doesn't work like that. And for me, the experience of motherhood, when I started to write the novel, my daughter was about 7 years old. And we were talking about this. I was, in a way, overwhelmed by the amount of decision-making that parenting involved. Like, everything about parenting involves a decision. It's like sometimes tens, hundreds, thousands of decisions a day. Some of them are very, very small. What will we have for lunch? But some of them are bigger. Should I put her in this school? Should I go talk to her teacher? Should I put pressure on her with the homework? Should I be more involved in her social life? Should I criticize her? Should I... Or him, or the child, and then I was starting to think. I still am. What can you do? I'm still deeply in love with my daughter, but I was thinking I love her so much, and I try to do the best that I can. But what if, at a certain point in time, I start a range of things that will go wrong, and I was, and suddenly I will look back and I will see that something very bad has happened between us, and I will not even be able to retrace it. So this experience of working with your intuition, with your life knowledge, with the advice that you get, of course, in some sort of reaction to your own childhood, because we can never invent our parenting completely from zero. It doesn't work like that. It's always a reaction to the positive or to the negative of how we were brought. So thinking, what happens if me, and I'm only interested, for me, in tender relationships. I don't care. In this novel, I didn't care about toxic parenting or abusive parenting or narcissistic parenting. I was talking about tender, caring parenting like I perceive my own. And I want to see how within that, nothing is clear cut. And you can have all sorts of emotions at every moment of the way. And you can change your moods. And you can make, and you can say things that you will regret. And most of all, you have such power over your child. Even if you utter something, the smallest thing, that can make a huge impact on your child and be sort of like a satellite that's around him for the rest of its life. And it's very hard to manage this force all the time and to be aware of the gravity of it. So all of this thing, I hope, this is confusing. It's not me wanting to confuse the readers. This is how life it is. Life is very confusing. And I was trying to, in a way, put it into words, this experience of how confusing it is to be a parent, and and how the cycles that you go in between love and devotion and guilt and anger and impatience and endless patience and etc. etc. So I'm not inventing anything. I'm just trying to reflect something. It's like not like I come with an intention to change how life works. I just want to maybe a little bit try and put it into words.
Ο Αβραάμ Ιωσούα, δεν ξέρω πόσοι.
Avraham Yosuf, I don't know how many of you know him. He is one of the greatest Israeli authors. He said that family is an excellent field for observation. It reveals a lot about human relationships, the balances of power developed, the moral dilemmas set in its members. And in Hilla Bloom's novel, the heroine says, I would like to watch movies that have to do with lives that were shaken for an unimportant reason. I'd like to talk about families like ours, about mistakes that are so easy to make, but no one forgives them, about accidents and crimes that are committed of good intention. And at another point, it writes, I'm not interested in miserable families. I'm interested in the unhappiness of happy families, of the fragility of average situation, of the family where I was born, of the family that I made. My question is the following. What is family for you? Is it a conscious cell of love? Is it a utopia of affection where its members communicate superficially, but in reality each one experiences its own loneliness? And what is mother's love after all? Because in the way that we see it here, we can realize that it has some noble feelings, but it has some less noble feelings. It has affection, but it also has possessiveness, guilt, insecurity, harshness.
I have to choose? All of the above and none of the above. No, seriously, if I knew how to say mother's love in a short answer, then I would save a lot of paper for Greece. No need for a whole novel. The question is something to explore. I don't think it really has an answer. The exploration, can give you some ideas and thoughts, but never come to one conclusion. If I have to make any sort of polarized distinction, I would say I'm interested in whether love is something that you essentially give your child, or is love something that you derive out of what you get of your parenting, and to what proportion these two interact. And if you talked about the family, I think, well, for me, family is the most interesting thing in the world, and I will tell you why. Because I think that the core of our existence is practiced through relationships, and the most, in my view, or maybe many times, the most important and deep and complex relationships we will ever have will be with our parents, siblings, of course with our life mates, but before that with our parents and our siblings. And this is, to say family is like to say life. It's much the same. This is our life is through the concept of a family, even if when you don't have a family, even if when you reject your family or being rejected by it, there's still this entity and this sort of tension between the family members constructs so much of our human experience. So for me, it is natural. What is a family? Everything, and in all sorts of constellations, and it carries all of the things that you said, and it's the most crucial part of our life experience. I think this is what constitutes and the foundation of everything, and not only the foundation, it's also what eventually what it's the material that you work with for the rest of your life. Oh, again, even when you're disconnected, the fact that you're disconnected doesn't mean that the family ceases to be important.
Η επόμενη ερώτησή μου είναι πάλι
My next question has to do once again with another comment that I found interesting. Once women were claiming their own room to remember Virginia Woolf. Now super feminists have a whole flat for their own. In the novel, we find all the phases of a woman's life, focusing maternity and motherhood. The author talks about how a woman feels during pregnancy. She talks about the depression after birth, about sexual desire, and many other things. My question is the following. Would you accept the characterization of feminist novel or female novel? And in general, I would be interested in knowing what is your opinion about what we call female novel. Do you believe that it is the correct way to define it in this way, or do we undermine it and limit it to a strictly female audience?
Oh, we will have to talk a lot about the semantics of your question before I can, even answer it. If we say that feminine literature is literature written by women, or today I think you need to say written by people identifying as a woman, then it is a fact. Okay, I'm a woman. I wrote a book. It's a feminine book. Okay, if it's about feminine, so to speak, topics, it is a different way to define it, and that would carry for me a different reaction. First of all, I think also because as a writer, I mean, part of what the license of literature, some people do it immensely well, some people do it terribly, but is to put yourself in another person's shoes. So it doesn't only have to do about writing the experience of being a woman. Which woman? I'm going into another woman's shoes. In that sense, I could go also into a man's shoes and try to give you or get an idea and then reflect the idea of what it is like to go through this experience. But I think that the main thing is not definitely the sex here. It's the kind of person and kind of life events that shaped its life, etc. So all in all, I don't care much about labels. But if you give me a label, and through this label, we can look at literature and find out more about it and come to more observations, then fine with me, For me, it's just a tool through which, it's just a prism through which you initiate more questions and more observations. You want to call my novel a feminine novel? Your choice, whatever that means to you.
Yeah. Ένας Γάλλος εκδότης είπε κάποτε
A French publisher said that in order to be a good publisher, you shouldn't feel the need to write. The paradox was that he also wrote a novel. I know that Hilla Bloom, that you have been working as an editor to one of the biggest publishing houses in Israel. So I would like you to tell me what was that thing that awakened in you the instinct of writing, and which were the authors, Israelis or foreigners, that affected you with their themes and their way of writing?
Right. So for my defense, first of all, I'd say that I've been writing long before I was an editor. I just didn't publish, but I was always writing. I started with some very, very horrible poetry when I was 6. Really, I don't know how my mother managed to keep her face and say, go ahead, go keep doing this. It was so terrible. And so I was always writing. And and I wanted to be a mathematician, but I wasn't hardly good enough, and then I switched to literature, which was my other love, and I was still writing, and then I became an editor, and I was still writing. What you can ask is the position for an editor, the one thing for an editor that maybe makes it more complex or complex in a very specific way, is that you work, and I had the privilege of working with fantastic Israeli authors, really. I think I'm sure, and you might know some of them. And then what happens if you put a book out and it's badly criticized, and then you still have to go tomorrow morning to the office and be an authority for some very, very successful writers? That might be awkward and a bad experience. But after, thinking about it for a while, I said, okay, but this is not going to be the decisive reason of if I publish or not. I will publish, and I will go through it, whatever it takes. And I think that finally, for me, the fact that I published a book after maybe 15 years of being an editor was extremely helpful in understanding my writers more. Because now I had a fuller vision, a fuller cycle of the process, of the experience, of the concerns, of the everything that is involved in writing and reception and etc. It helped me.
What about the authors that
Digging,
Shakespeare alike?
Oh, right, that one. So, okay, of course, in my book, the Yoela, my heroine, is absolutely not me, and her daughter is not my daughter, and her husband is not my life mate. But I can say very simply that I gave her my reading life. I gave it to Yoela. Like, in other words, she read the books that I read. So, and she oftentimes mentions books that she read that for her give her some insight into her situations and experiences, and she relates to characters as if they were real. I'm not saying that she thinks that they're real, that she's not insane, but she relates to them emotionally, and in that way I'm very much like her when I read. So if you look at the back of the book, there is a list of the books that she talks about and refers to, and quotes from, and all of these books have been very, very important to me in my reading life and in shaping my concept of what can be done in literature.
Μιλώντας πάλι για λογοτεχνία, θα ήθελα λίγο να ρωτήσω...
I would like to ask something that is a concern, maybe of you as well. What is the future of novels today? We have said that novels express the complex. It maps the world from another point of view. It enables the individual to take distance from itself. But now that thought is shrunk through social media, through mass media, what is the future of novel? When an author writes, what is the target audience? Do you believe that the novel will no longer be written, at least in the way that we know it up to date? Or in our days, the novel is more necessary than ever?
I'm flattered that you think that I can tell you that, but I have no idea. But no. But ever since I'm a reader, and definitely ever since I'm an editor, literature has been. איך אומרים הספידו אותה? כאילו שהיא הולכת. איך אומרים הספידו?
την κάνει να βιάζεται.
Like as if people have been talking about the end and death of literature. Everything's I remember myself all the time. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, even 40 years ago. So far, it exists. I really hope, for my sake, that it will continue to exist. First of all, because I want to write more, but I have to read more, and if this is finished now, it will be very, very sad. So for me, and I think there's a lot of people like me, literature is, of course, I see television and I see movies and I hear music, etc. But the most important form of art and confessions of the humankind for me personally, the place where I find myself most I get most not observed, immersed in is literature. And I think still for there's a large number of people in this world that feel the same, and I think that for them literature will prevail. And but 50 years from now, 100,000 years from now, if this soul exists, and
Η επόμενη ερώτησή μου είναι η εξής.
My next question is the following. Those of us who have read Israeli authors that have been translated in Greek, for example, Avram Yoshua, Amos Oz, David Grossman, we know that in their works, in their books, we have a political aspect. This goes hand in hand with their personal experiences. We know that these authors were expressing, apart from their personal experiences, the collective experiences. And many were saying that they are something like prophets, so they had an impact on the way of thinking. We could say that in their works, the political element went hand in hand with the experience, and it affected the characters and the plot of the book. I see that in modern authors, this political element is absent, or it is secondary or tertiary. So my question to Hilla Bloom is the following. The choice not to have direct historical or political references to your work, is it a way of emancipation, a way of liberation from dealing with hot issues and hot challenges of your country? Do you claim the right to normality by bringing at the center, at the heart of your work, issues that are not less important, for example, motherhood, the mental situation of the mental condition of a woman, and mental disorders, and many others?
The way you phrase that. I don't think it's intentional, and that might be also already the answer. By nature, I'm not a very political person. I am very, very much interested in the more private realms of life, like what happens in the inner chambers of the homes, of people's lives. And naturally, this is what I write about. So you are very right in saying that terrorist bombings in Jerusalem, but very much in passing in the book. But this is not a major concern in the novel. It's just, and for me, I don't think about it as emancipation. I might think that maybe I am already, in that sense, more privileged than the previous generations. The way that I am emancipated, because I can lead a life that is, by the way, very Israeli, because some people, to be Israeli is also to be families and mothers and to interact with people, and mentality and norms of child raising and humor and the way we use the language, and all of that exists in my book, of course, because I'm Israeli and I'm the one who wrote it, and I talk about things that interest me and are concerns for a lot of other peoples, but they are also concerns for a lot of other peoples in other countries. And also, I think that today, the global village as a phrase, it's not just it's not just a phrase. Like young people today are citizens, quote unquote, of social networks just as much as they're citizens of their respective countries, and they are interested, and there's a lot of similarities. So of course, some cultures are still very different in many ways, but a lot of cultures become more and more similar in that sense. Also, parents experience the same predicaments, they have the same questions, they draw on the same resources to help them answer them, etc., etc. So for me, this is also a huge, not for me, for everyone, it's a huge part of living in Israel. And I'm entitled to write about it, but it doesn't even go through entitlement. It's just very natural for me to be covering those topics. They're central to my life, and I write about them.
Η τελευταία ερώτηση είναι περισσότερο για να σας...
The last question is a challenging one, so that I can provoke you and encourage you.
Not only you.
So I would like to encourage you to raise your own questions. So I would like to talk about the art of reading. We have the art of novel writing, and we have the art of reading. Why do we read? In order to get into contact with heroes and characters that we do not know, to learn about a philosophy that was unknown to us, to get acquainted with new mentalities. If we didn't read, we would stay locked in our small world. So what are we trying to do as readers? Do we want to identify ourselves with the heroes? Does the author want to make us think by distancing in order to have a critical way of thinking? Because we don't want to lose our ability to have a critical thinking. So what makes us read? And when an author writes, how does the author construct and build up his hero?
It's like that. How to construct an... wow. How much time do we have? No, so I will have to take just part of this question, because I look at your clock and I say that we have 2 minutes. And for me, look, for me, as I said before, the books that are most consuming to me and that are tantalizing to me is books that can happen sometimes in very, very far away countries, in completely different climates, in every way, cultural, social, weather, and tell me something about my experience that lightens my eyes, that suddenly I realize something. And the most precious thing about literature for me is the kind of literature not so much that builds worlds, that constructs worlds, because some writers are phenomenal at that, at building worlds and in imagining things and creating universes. But for me, the literature that is most compelling is literature that exposes the world. That I look at something and comes a writer and says something about this, and I say, oh my gosh, this has been there in front of my eyes all the time, but now she named it. She made me understand something about it that I sort of knew, but I didn't have words for. So it helps me. Literature, for me, the most important literature helps me mediate my experience for myself. It gives me words for my experience. So I don't know if it has to do with the art of reading, but this is what I look for. And as an editor, you read something very different from what you read as a reader, because as an editor, I read something not as a final line. I read something as an option, as a like you give me an option of what do you think about this and that, and I think about, okay, this we can do it this way or that way. I always question what I read and I read an editor. As a writer, because I'm an editor for so many years, I also do it automatically, because you can't switch it on and off. But the minute that I stop to be an editor when I read, then I know this is a great book for me. That I stopped editing and I'm just now reading. It usually happens after a few pages if it's a book that really appeals to me. I think I don't know if this is the art of reading, but this is what I look for me to happen. That I completely give into it and let it take me with them.
Να ευχαριστήσουμε καταρχάς την Χίλα.
First of all, we would like to thank Hille Blum. So, if you have any questions, we still have 1 or 2 minutes to answer.
Question is, what was the first idea that made you want to write this book? And the other question is, what is the most difficult point, according to your opinion, in the relationship between mother and daughter. The most difficult thing.
What is going on with your people? You ask a question and no, it is now a whole new. Give us another hour. Do we have? Ah. I didn't have an idea. I wanted to explore the sentiment that I said before, very much about this walking through so many insecurities and uncertainties of motherhood, and because this was something that was troubling me and worrying me, I said it's better if I make all the mistakes with the heroine and not with my daughter. You know, I try to do better in life, and then I give the heroine the freedom to make the mistakes. So this is what brought me into it. I don't think I can point a very one difficult point. I can tell you, like, for now, my daughter is now 19. We're entering this phase of that I have to let go. Very difficult. But is it more difficult than it was when she was 4 years old and I had to put her in kindergarten? Maybe not. You know, it's different. So every moment every phase has its difficulties, and that's it, really. Thank you so much. We're done?
Υπάρχει καμία άλλη ερώτηση?
Any other questions? So we would like to warmly thank Hilla Bloom for coming and visiting us.
Editor of the book, and I understand that she's done a magnificent job. I'm so sorry I cannot read it myself. I would have loved to. And thank you everyone for coming,
Excuse
and
me,
thank
but
you
you can't
for
judge
the. Sorry?
You can't judge it. The
No, I can't.
translation
I
you
said
can't-
I've heard. I've heard. And thank you for the translation. And you guys, thanks.